what would have maybe been prudent is a controlled detonation in the housing market. It would have been a generational wealth transfer, would have destroyed paper gains on boomer balance sheets. That's not even on the radar. Wealth concentration has priced people out of their ability to pay off the debt. And a White House that's putting out tweets about how they stopped inflation when the American dream was shipped overseas. I would triple the size of the Department of Justice antitrust wing and sue every corporation in America that is offshore jobs. If you don't have a political system that is capable of holding them accountable, and you don't have the balls to pull a Bitkey, the right way to do is probably to think like an accelerationist, think like the left. All of DC is just going to be blindsided by this major political shift.
Mark Mitchell, we're cooked?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's the diagnosis. We're freaking cooked. Here we are with the middle class being hollowed out, all of America's jobs being sent overseas. The most pro H-1B person on the planet, Elon Musk, screaming at people to procreate while giving away the salaries that they need to do it to the rest of the world. And a White House that's putting out tweets about how they stopped inflation when the American dream was shipped overseas. It's like, I gave them that message at the White House. Like, you probably need to actually address the underlying fundamental issues and actually explain to people how the Republican Party can fix that, or we're all going to be socialists. And right now it looks like it's the socialist thing. So, cooked.
Well, since you mentioned, I didn't know if you were willing to talk about it, but we were supposed to record last week, but you had an emergency trip to the White House to try to talk some sense to the administration, because over the last few months specifically, but even last year during the election, I think that's when I found you'd started following you more closely. It seems like you have your finger on the pulse of the sentiment, particularly in younger generations. And that's one thing that I like how you phrase it, like polling Rasmussen. You don't understand what everyone is thinking. It's like, why are they actually thinking it? And I think over the last month, particularly with your crusade on X, sharing the DMs that you've been receiving from younger generations, it's really highlighted why the sentiment has collapsed for this particular administration.
Yeah. I mean, we're at the end of the fourth turning, and we can get into what that is for people who don't know what it is. But basically, in my opinion, all of our institutions have been corrupted. Society is fraying. People are increasingly divisive. They don't understand what the problems are. And unfortunately for our politicians who have to solve those problems, you kind of have to have your head on a swivel and be smart about what people are saying beneath the numbers. Just to step back, though, like we're often slandered as being right-wing or Republican pollsters. I'm an independent pollster, which means that I'm not on the payroll of either party. And I'm just looking out for the voters. And what's weird is that we're pretty much like the only people in the political industry who are doing that. Like literally everybody has a lobbyist except for the people. The think tanks and the parties are supposed to be that, but they've been completely corrupted by special interests. And so when a White House asks me to come to the Oval Office to talk about economic messaging, that's a pretty big deal, because that's like actually a lobbyist for the people being able to go down there. And they can't fire me. They can't cut off my business because they never paid me anything. And it's like, I've been doing this honest polling as a charity. The rest of the industry is really hopelessly corrupt. Like Rich Barris is good. Trafalgar, Matt Towery are good. That's basically it. Everybody else is just shilling for special interest in the establishment. And, polling gets misused to protect things like the H-1B program, which has been one of the boots on the throats of the American people. So I went down there and, I think part of it is because sort of JD gets all this. And I think Trump does too, but he's surrounded by all of the same kind of people. You know what I mean? It's like his donors, Fox News talking heads. And it's wild that there seems to be such a dividing line in the polling at the age 50, where under 50 people just totally think differently than people above 50. And it's partly news consumption. It's partly this generational divide between the values that people were grown up with. But the under 50 people are going to win. It's just a matter of time. And so you see a lot of like rebelling against the old ways of doing things. I think Israel is a very good example, because the younger voters completely on opposite ends of the spectrum than the older voters. And unfortunately, Trump is surrounded by a lot of older interests, billionaires, traditional Republicans, all the think tanks that have been in DC that have done things a certain way for decades, and Sean Hannity, Mark Levin, like Lindsey Graham. These are the voices in his ear. And I think they know that, and they're trying to get other voices in, like Charlie Kirk, I think, was a big influence. But unfortunately, in Trump 1, kind of the way they did things was to throw things at a wall and see what sticks. Well, we're 10 years farther down the late stage capitalist timeline, and the music's starting to stop. Like we need much more aggressive fixes. And like I said, I think that the Democrats at least have a product offering. Their offering is democratic socialism. Republicans are still trying to like sell you sort of like glammed up Mitt Romney.
Trickle down. It's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally. We're going to cut taxes on these major corporations. And trust me, bro, it'll make your life better.
Yeah. Well, this is perplexing considering this. I mean, 2016, I was 25 at the time in the lead up to that election. And obviously 2020 happened. We had 4 years of Biden, and then last year's election. And my observation of Trump over the last decade, it seems that one of his strong points is that he's had his finger on the pulse of the zeitgeist, especially when campaigning. And in Trump 1, I think that was the biggest disappointment as he got in office and sort of lost touch with the zeitgeist. And I think a lot of people are feeling miffed this time around because it was like, okay, round 2, campaigning still has his finger on the zeitgeist. It's going to be different this time. There's going to be new people in there, but meet the new boss, same as the old boss. We got fooled again.
Yeah. All the groypers are passing around that fell for it again meme. I mean, it is kind of like that. And I can't blame it all on him. So back in Trump 1, again, the bar was a lot lower, and Hillary Clinton was a terrible candidate, and the system didn't suck as bad for everybody. Like there hadn't been 10 years of like literally DEI discrimination in the workplace. 10 years of offshoring has done a lot. The post-COVID economy is really bad. And then on the cherry on top, obviously, was the Biden inflation. I feel like the Biden administration was kind of like, at the end of the Roman Empire where they plunder the treasury. That's kind of what like the Biden administration probably was. And so everybody hated Biden. It was wild that we went through this period of mass formation where Biden really did, despite the fraud, turn out a lot of voters. He got a lot of people interested in politics because they thought that Trump was the chaos and that the system and the adults can be put back in charge and restore order. Like fundamentally, my thesis is that people just want order. And so what was wild to see Trump, who was down in our polls like 6 points nationally, to then less than a year later be winning by 10, like a 16-point swing in politics is unbelievable. And so that was a complete collapse in trust for the institutions. Everybody thought that Biden was going to save them. It was a complete rickroll. And, they were chanting in stadiums, FJB, like just a year later. And so now the Biden administration was so bad, like that you had the mandates, you had all the discrimination, you had the big bailout bills, you had all of the blatant and obvious corruption, the censorship, like it was really bad. And then Trump basically wins on blowback for that. Like he didn't really have a unified message. It was like, hey, we're going to fix the border crisis and some other things. And then he got shot and he's like, fight, fight, fight. And everybody's like, yeah, that's my guy. But there was never really this like fight, fight, fight for what? If you go back and look at Mike Johnson's like transcripts from early November last year, and it was like, we're going to get gas prices down and get wokeness out of the schools. And it wasn't like there was no unified, like now we're going to deliver on X. And here we are a year later and everybody's like, well, why wasn't X delivered on? Well, it's like, that's a good question. But the Republican Party wasn't there, again, to fill that vacuum with product offering. It's the conservatives. They've conserved nothing, and now they're trying to conserve conservatism. But in my opinion, conservatism is almost like a luxury belief at this point. It's like, is that really what we're going to do? We're just going to keep like praying to free market capitalism and hope that this time it'll finally fix it all. No, we've been through the offshoring layoffs. Then we went through the H-1B layoffs. Well, the AI layoffs are coming. And so if you can't solve that problem, then people are literally going to vote for universal basic income. I've done the polling and everybody in Washington, D.C. is like, oh, under 40 voters are so conservative. We're finally winning on the ideals. Like, no, you're going to lose. Even the ones that voted for Trump are socialists. They just want order. They just want their problems fixed. And they are totally happy with voting with Mondami because you said you were going to burn the system down and they saw what you were doing with Doge. They liked it. And then you rug pulled them. There's another rug pull.
And it's funny too, because the sort of vision they're painting and really leaning into is the AI revolution, which I'm a technologist. I use AI. I think there is something there. But to your point, I think the reckoning with the disruption to the job market that's going to bring is completely necessary. There has to be a conversation, has to be done tactfully. But as we earlier this week, the Genesis project was laid out. It's like, okay, we're going to double down on this. And then on top of that, you already have leaders of the AI industry and even the AI czar, crypto and AI czar, David Sachs, basically alluding to the fact that this is going to be backstopped by the government. And so we're going to fund your replacement.
And they wonder why their economic messaging isn't doing great. It's like people can't afford things. And you're saying, well, look at this boom of investment. We're going to be the future of AI. And everybody's like, well, you're just going to take our jobs. Like, my taxpayer money is funding the thing that will kill me. And I don't think people want universal basic income. I don't think people want to live in the pods and eat the bugs. But it's like, again, there's no product offering at all. And it's like Trump is leaning into, I said these words to him. I said a lot to him, but one of the things that I definitely underscored was like, there is an oligarchy here. It's in charge and not everybody knows it, but they feel these forces. And there's a lot of opportunity to smash the oligarchy instead of like being surrounded by it and being a part of it. And I think that again, we're in a point where I don't think there's any easy answers, but people hate big businesses even more than they hate the government. And Donald Trump won because people hate the government. It was not Kamala Harris. It was Biden's government and the fact that trust in the federal government got down to only 30%. Kamala Harris had 49% trust. She won the vote of half the country. 30% trust in the government, and she was the government candidate. And so they voted for Trump, and Trump's like, okay, cool. Now I'm the government guy. And, I don't know.
What's up, freaks? This rip is brought to you by our good friends at Silent. Silent creates everyday Faraday gear that protects your hardware. We're in Bitcoin. We have a lot of hardware that we need to secure. Your wallet emits signals that can leave you vulnerable. You want to pick up Silent's gear, put your hardware in that. I have a tap signer right here. I got the Silent card holder, replaced my wallet. I was using Ridge Wallet because it's secured against RFID signal jacking. Silent, the card holder, does the same thing. It's much sleeker, fits in my pocket much easier. I also have the Faraday phone sleeve, which you can put a hardware wallet in. We're actually using it for our keys at the house too. There's been a lot of robberies. They have essential Faraday slings, Faraday backpacks. It's a Bitcoin company. They're running on a Bitcoin standard. They have a Bitcoin treasury. They accept Bitcoin via Strike. So go to slnt.com/TFTC to get 15% off anything, or simply just use the code TFTC when shopping at slnt.com. Patented technology, special operations approved. It has free shipping as well, so go check it out.
What's up, freaks? When you take Bitcoin seriously, you start with custody. You want to control your keys, avoid single points of failure, and make sure your savings cannot disappear because you or someone else screwed up. That is what Unchained has been focused on since 2016. Unchained is the leader in collaborative multi-sig custody and Bitcoin financial services that keep you in control. They secure over $12 billion in Bitcoin for more than 12,000 clients. That means about 1 out of every 200 Bitcoin sits inside an Unchained vault. Their model is simple. You hold 2 keys, they hold 1 key. And it always takes 2 keys to move Bitcoin, meaning their single key can't access your Bitcoin on its own. Just resilient, shared custody that gives you institutional grade security while keeping you sovereign. Unchained also lets you trade straight from your vault, access Bitcoin-backed commercial loans, open a Bitcoin IRA where you hold your own keys, and set up personal, business, trust, or retirement vaults. They even offer inheritance solutions built for long-term hodlers. Or opt for the highest level private client service with Unchained Signature and get a dedicated account manager, discounted trading fees, exclusive access to events and features, and much, much more. If you want a partner that helps you secure and grow your Bitcoin without giving up control, go to unchained.com and use the code TFTC10 at checkout to get 10% off your new Bitcoin multisig vault. That's TFTC10 at unchained.com.
I mean, coming back to H-1B and big business, I think this is the issue of the year, starting with Christmas Eve last year, when Vivek put out that thread, and then Elon sort of hopped on it as well, really engendering the spirit of this is a good thing. We need to lean into this. Americans are stupid and lazy. And I think that's been one of the most astonishing things that I've seen on your X account over the last 3 weeks is the amount of DMs from
Oh,
people
wow.
that have been affected by this policy, which is big business, basically using this loophole to import cheap indentured slave labor, essentially. And not only that, but the whole idea that the talent doesn't exist here in America, we need to import it, I think is objectively false. The end products that come out of these companies are typically way worse than they were before this program existed.
Yeah, I should tweet something about that. I mean, I came out of the tech industry most recently, and I worked at a big corporate gig I worked at Jet.com, which got acquired by Walmart. And so I worked in Walmart e-commerce, and objectively, the cultural aspects of the Indian engineering that they import create significant amounts of customer friction. This is a high power distance culture where problems are buried because nobody wants to get fired. And my job was to unbury the problems. And if you've ordered on Walmart and your order's gotten messed up, they sent you the wrong item, it got lost, it's got blah, blah, blah. There's a 4 in 5 chance that it was because of technology problems caused by legacy systems and bad engineering and low quality control. And that's happening, I think, at every major Fortune 500. And systematically, this is like part of the political calculus that I think most people under 40 fundamentally know, and that everybody in DC is just like completely retarded on. And so if you look at H-1Bs, the program's actually really popular. People love the H-1B program. It's like 65-30 or something like that. And that's because I think fundamentally people are still like sort of coded to like immigration, and they like the idea of taking talent from other countries. But then if you ask them, well, okay, do corporations really need this talent, or are the corporations gaming it? And people are like, oh, they're probably gaming it. Last time we checked, it was 48-38, I think. And then if you give them the Laura Ingraham quote that we have the talent and we don't need to flood the country with labor from everywhere else, they're like, yeah, hell yeah, we don't do that, like 2-1. So the problem in DC is that they'll just take the headline that everybody loves the H-1B program because it allows them to like help their corporate interests. They can say, hey, like I can help you out. We'll do this. And the corporations do this. And it's so much more pervasive. So you have all these people where there's real high severity because they had to train their own replacement. But then it's even worse because it's like this boot of discrimination on everybody's throat. People don't talk about this a lot. The H-1B, in my opinion, a lot of it isn't just the lower wages. It isn't just the subservient workforce because you're holding, going back to your country over people's heads. I think it's also used in order to lower blended healthcare costs for these employer plans, because if you want to replace the old people with the young people, well, it helps to have a bottomless well of young people. And they don't even do the math that I think Walmart's engineering is over 60% foreign national now. Biggest company in the US by revenue, and over 60%. And that's a national security threat. If you think about it too, this is happening at Google. It's happening at Amazon. It's happening at Microsoft. It's happening at most of the banking industries have given their technology over to the rest of the country. And the Republicans are like, sweet, this is great. My donors love it. And again, it's a popular program. But anybody who's touched it, who's tried to get a resume through an HR Karen, like just knows that this is manipulated. These people lie on resumes. And so when Trump comes out and he uses billionaire talking points to defend the program, that's like the biggest failure of not understanding the core base and their needs. And unfortunately for them, they don't like to acknowledge the fact that a lot of their core base is young men under 40 who have been the doormat of society for the last 10 years. They've literally been pariahs. They've been political pariahs. And the Republican Party won't embrace those people. They'll turn their backs on those people because of like some stuff about Israel. And it's like, that's the problem. Like you're going to lose. There's going to be major political upheaval because these people are still being driven to extremist situations. And, you talked about the horseshoe theory of politics is a real thing on the right. This one's wild. It'll blow your mind. We've polled a lot about voters under 40. And in the last set, we asked people, well, AI is getting more advanced and people are frustrated with government. Would you support giving control of governance and lawmaking in the United States to an advanced artificial intelligence? And it was like 41-50, I think. But the people who supported it most were conservatives. Under 40 conservatives were like, yes, please put us out of our misery. Just let the AI take over. We had another question about would you give control of the military to AI? And under 40 conservatives are like, yep, by a plurality that they're like, let's build Skynet. Let's just get it over with. It's just wild. And these people, and they're being completely ignored. They're, oh, it's just a couple of groypers. Like, no, there's about 5 to 10 million of them. And they were the initial core of the reason Trump got elected in 2016. But and again, this is just wild because like anybody who watches Asmongold or like the Shoe on Head just put a really great video out. Like anybody on the internet, like fundamentally kind of gets this. And every single human I've talked to in Washington, D.C. just has no idea at all. It's just the disconnect is so bleak. They are not serving the people.
Were they shocked when you were bringing them this information?
So I went down there, I co-hosted War Room, and then I had like 3 meetings. So I did the White House, and literally nothing I said was anything that was a surprise to JD Vance. So that was good. Like he gets it. He was the one that's trying to bring more voices in. And I think Trump gets a lot of it too. But again, he's surrounded by Fox News talking heads and billionaires. And then I went to the RNC, and I wasn't there long. Joe Gruters seems like a nice guy. I was told that Joe Gruters is more of like a MAGA loyalist than prior people were there. But the organization itself just seemed kind of like out of touch. Like I got this hey, we have the right message and we have the right set of values, so we just need to vote harder. And it's like, no, you're going to lose. And then I went to the Capital Partnership Institute, Conservative Partnership Institute. It was like a nonprofit think tank. I think it's Mark Meadows set it up. And the idea is to like take the youth Republican staffers and feed them into this hopper of like true conservatism, I guess. And so there was like about 40 people in their 20s, mostly, who are supposed to be like the core conservative in Washington, D.C. And I feel like they really wanted to hear my message. I spoke a lot about the fourth turning, about burn it down politics, about how the right is outclassed and how long term everybody wants to go socialist, blah, blah, blah. And they were open and receptive to my conversation, but I could tell they hadn't really heard it very much. And none of them are fighting the info war. None of these people are on the internet at all. They're super, super like afraid that they'll say something that will get back to them in a Senate confirmation hearing or something. So like even the conservative in Washington, D.C. doesn't really necessarily represent and conservative in Washington, D.C. really still does mean this like economic libertarian, social conservative aspect that is an offshoot of like old Heritage Foundation and stuff like that. So like they're changing, they're trying to change. I think like I can see the initial steps, but it's just so glacial when it's up against a very smart and unified machine. Like I think the Democrats are starting to realize that they can actually win without being insane. Like I don't know why they were ever like that. But, like I hate to be kind of reductive with a lot of this stuff, but I think the polling backs it up, is that the Democrats really will just win by not being retarded. If they stopped backing the climate change stuff so hard, they stopped with all the gay stuff and literally were just like, hey, kitchen table stuff. Like maybe it wasn't smart to like try to say we should defund the police. They would just win because they have a brand advantage. They control the institutions in government. They're actually positioned in many ways to deliver better than the Republican Party is because the Republican Party is just completely ceded control to the Democrats. And obviously the Democrats have done it by like, arbitraging taxpayer money into NGOs and centralizing everything and having a ubiquitous message and punishing people that didn't toe the line. But that's the problem, is that the right is like completely, it's like herding cats to get anything done. And it's just complete asymmetry where the left is this just organized machine that, again, I don't know why it's been as weird as it has, but I think it's going to learn from that. And you just look, they're embracing their youth movement and the Republicans aren't. Democrats are becoming increasingly socialist and Republicans are very conservative. But what, you know what I mean? Like the socialist wing of the Democratic Party is their youth movement and it's being leaned into. They're starting to get that now. Like Chuck Schumer is the old way. He's going to go away. Nancy Pelosi's gone. It's going to be like the Squad and Mamdani. It's going to be people like that. It's going to, and to be honest with you, when I've done the head-to-heads, JD Vance polls very well. The only person, and it was a couple months ago, but the only person that ever beat him in a matchup so far, Bernie Sanders. So, and driven entirely by his name recognition with the youth because they think that he will change things. So I think JD Vance has a good message too. Again, the problem is that it's not the message of the Republican Party.
No. And to your point about the Democrats, if they wise up and distill everything to kitchen table politics, if you just look at Mamdani's campaign, particularly the social media aspect of it, and they're able to apply that to whoever they want within the party, it's going to be game over. If they can apply that kitchen table democratic politic in the way in which Mamdani did on TikTok and all the social platforms, it's not going to end well.
Yeah, it's just really weird, and the right is just like fiddling on the Titanic because they'll pound their chests about conservatism and traditional values and individualism and like all this stuff, right? We asked the question, what's better, capitalism or socialism? And everybody says capitalism still, even under 40. They say, yeah, capitalism's obviously a better system. And then the under 40 Trump voters, 3/4 of them want to nationalize major industries. Almost 60% of them want excess wealth confiscation. You know what I mean? So it's like they like capitalism. They know we don't have it. And so, of course, they're going to vote for a Democrat socialist. Like, why wouldn't you? Let's try something new. Old way isn't working. Let's try something new. And like all of DC is just going to be blindsided by this major political shift. Like, I think there's a very big age aspect. It's probably even worse in the Republican Party. But when you look at everybody in Congress and the Senate, 60% of them are boomers and only 14% of them are millennials. So that number is going to change over the next 10 years a lot, like a lot. Boomers is probably going to be down to like 30%. Millennials is probably going to be up to like 40, 45. Then you throw the Zoomers in there, they're going to get pretty close to half soon. So you're going to see things like a whole nother look at social safety nets. So when you bring these things up online, it's really fascinating, in my opinion. And this gets back to the fourth turning stuff, is like when you look at the responses in the arguments, it's very easy to spot a boomer response. And unfortunately, the Republican Party is basically the boomer party, very much still controlled by those types of people. And what they say about the under 40s is, well, they just need to work as hard as I did, or they need to like walk their resume up to the boss and hand it to him personally, because that worked for me back in 1972. Why can't they just move to a different town? Or maybe they need to take on another job, or just stop taking the medication and maybe you won't be so crazy. You know what I mean? It's like that kind of thing. And I see it all the time. And I try and push back, and it's like, you're not helping. You're not helping. Well, it was tough for us. You know what I mean? Here's the one that gets me. It's like, well, I paid into Social Security. And it's like, okay, but these people aren't going to have Social Security and they're still paying for yours. So I wouldn't talk about your Social Security check. I would pretend that like it doesn't, just be quiet about that. Have you heard about the Day of the Pillow?
I have heard people tweeting about it, but I haven't dove into it.
It's like 4chan green text lore that millennials apparently have. And I'm like right on the edge between X and millennial. So I'm a Zennial. I kind of call myself like Switzerland in this whole thing. Like I don't have a side. But the 4chan text was about how all of these boomers that had like a really, really great run in America, and they'll say they didn't, but they did. They really did. They grew up in a great time. They had a really great corporate experience. Sure, some of them got sent to Nam. That was bad. But they got to experience like the good parts of society fraying, which is like, breaking out and experiencing all this new stuff, and not really any of the bad parts. And they're going to get the full social safety net treatment. They're getting the best that Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security has to offer. Great retirements, awesome healthcare. Think about the healthcare technology boom that's going to extend the life of boomers that our country can't afford to supply to the millennials and Gen Z. And they'll say, well, I paid this. So the green text is basically about all these boomers sitting around in nursing homes that are going to be staffed with legal aliens that the boomers brought in. And, some immigrant who has no ties to the country and no financial future, who finally just puts a pillow over their face it's really dark in the home, after they strip mined America. But, again, it's dark, but what's that has morphed into is that there will come a time in the next 10 to 15 years where the Zoomers and millennials will have the political power to shut off the social safety nets or make a major change or redistribute wealth or whatever. And we're kind of on that cusp now because in the White House, for instance, the housing market is a crisis levels. They say it's a crisis in the polling. The under 40 voters, like 75% said it was a crisis. It's only in the teens that said no. And most of them think they'll never be able to get a house. And then that's backed up by the data. The National Association of Realtors put out the first time homebuyer chart, went above 40 for the very first time, right on election day. And it's just shooting up. So basically right now our real estate markets, it's just boomers selling houses to boomers. And, I go to the White House and I say, well, you got to stop talking about turkey because people can't afford a house to put the turkey in. And he's like, well, yeah, but a lot of people really are worried about those home values and they want to keep them up. I'm like, well, yeah, I agree with you, but you need to get the vote of the under 40s and the housing market is a deal breaker for them. And so I said, what would have maybe been prudent is a controlled detonation in the housing market. And that would have actually been a wealth transfer. It would have been a generational wealth transfer. It would have destroyed the paper gains on boomer balance sheets and transferred assets that the whole new generation could grow into. And that's not even on the radar. That's not even, and it's because you put Bill Pulte in charge of housing, you put bankers in charge of banking, and the Bill Pulte plan. It's a joke.
50-year mortgage is insulting.
It was like Jamie Dimon and the home builder lobby built the best plan to not only is it not a solution, it makes things worse. Yeah. So it increases demand for housing without increasing supply. We all know what happens when you do that, right? Pricing goes up even better, which is better for who's that better for? Bankers, home builders, investors, and boomers. And then the Zoomers that do get into the market are going to be buying in at the peak, helping a boomer cash out, right? And then saddling them with 50 years of being underwater, right? And then they're going to pay more interest to the banks. Literally everybody wins, but the under 40 voter. And Bill Pulte might be a nice guy, but you should fire that guy. That was dumb. And you had one shot to do this right. And again, you got to smash the oligarchy, not be the oligarchy. And I think most people don't understand the deeper problems here. But when the entire internet is laughing at you, there's a problem. And
I mean, the mimetic framing of it alone, you have Trump next to FDR. It's hey, buddy, don't you realize that was the guy that incited all this welfare state nonsense that we have to put up with today?
That's right. And you know what Mamdani's going to be if they, wave the magic wand and find out he has a birth certificate from Des Moines or something. What they're gonna do with that guy is try and make him into the next FDR, which is even more ironic, right? And I was even taking my swipes at it. I said Trump's plan for affordability was 3-year loans for turkeys for Thanksgiving with no money down, 3-year loans for the turkey. And people were like, I don't know, I might have to trade down to a chicken this year. We've done a
public-private deal with Afterpay. Don't worry, we're going to get you the best rates. It's
oh no.
What's up, freaks? Been seeing a lot of YouTube comments. Marty, your skin looks so good. You're looking fit these days. How are you doing it? Well, number one, I'm going to the gym more. Trying to get my swell on. Trying to be a good example for my young sons, a fit, healthy dad. But part of that is having a good regimen, particularly staying hydrated, making sure I have the right electrolytes and salts in my body. That is why I use Salt of the Earth. I drink probably 3 of these a day with 1 packet of Salt of the Earth. I'm liking the pink lemonade right now. It's my flavor of choice. This is their creatine. I've added this to my regimen. They have it in these packets as well. Makes it extremely convenient if you're traveling. You want to work out while you're traveling, but you don't want to be carrying a white bag of powder going through TSA. It's very, very nerve-wracking at times. You have to explain, hey, it's not what you think it is. It's creatine. I'm trying to get my swell on. Make sure you're staying hydrated. I have become addicted to these. It's made my life a lot better. I can supplement this for coffee in the morning and be energized right away. I can bring the creatine wherever I need to, just put a couple packets in here before I head to the gym, bring this to the gym, drink out of a glass bottle, make sure I'm not injecting any microplastics into my body. Go to drinksote.com, use the code TFTC, and you'll get 15% off anything in the store. That's drinksote.com, code TFTC. All this, and like I said before we hit record, it's as a millennial in my mid-30s, young family, about to buy my first house, and I'm fortunate that I'm going to be able to do so, but I think it took too long for me to get to this point. You look at everything we've discussed, and you mentioned it earlier, this is late stage capitalism, but I would argue this is like late stage fiat. Like all this that we're talking about emanates from the fact that we can print money and throw it at whatever the hell we want. And so when you look at the housing market specifically, this is one I like to focus on because the boomers are using their houses as piggy banks and just riding the wave of currency debasement, which pushes up the value of their houses more than the pace of inflation. And this is what really worries me about the current political climate with everybody running to the polar ends. I think people are running to the polar ends, and that's being incited by this economic stress that exists. And so you're seeing this economic populism manifest in 2 different forms, far left, far right. And really you're just swiping at the symptoms of the problem and not getting to the core of the problem. So I don't know what your thoughts on sound money, but like me personally, like that, like this is what I've dedicated my life to. Is I didn't start out prefacing it in a political way, but increasingly so over the last decades, you've been sort of forced into the political realm. It's like, hey guys, I understand there's a lot of economic stress. The right, you're mad that the immigrants are taking our jobs, that you can't buy a house. The left, I understand that you think the corporate oligarchs are taking all the wealth. You're right. Both of you are right to a certain extent, but the solution to this problem is not overt communism or having a strongman fascist come in and physically remove people that you disagree with. Like there is a core to this problem, which is the money and the fact that you can print it and throw it at whatever you want. And both sides are doing it.
So I wonder if I have, let me see if I can pull up anything while I'm talking here. One of the problems is that I agree 100% with you that there is like a problem there. But one of the things is that it's so abstract to your average voter that they know they're getting screwed, but they don't know why or who. And so I think that this anger goes to big corporations and it goes to government and not necessarily things like the Fed or the monetary system. Trying to find if we've even polled on it. Now, I am hopeful about the right in that if you remember, and again, I don't have numbers on this, but one of the things that people were happy about on the internets when Trump came in was that we were going to audit the Fed. We were going to go after the DOD. We were going to take a look at the IRS. We were going to look at all of these systems, the system, right? The oligarchy. And I also think, too, is that there's increasing anger on the right at the corporate oligarchy as well. A lot of people who say, nope, this is not free market capitalism. If that was true, if it was the left that hated the corporate oligarchy, I mean, we polled on big businesses and the numbers were of people who didn't trust big corporations was 60, 70% among Republicans. It's almost as high as the left. And then I think there is this aspect of the horseshoe theory of politics, which is okay, it's not a right-left spectrum. It's when you add another layer of authoritarianism, then the extreme right and the extreme left become a lot closer together. And that is true. That is really true because, again, look at the under 40 voters who would put an AI in charge of the government and look at the under 40 voters who would nationalize Trump voters, who would nationalize major industries. And what's kind of wild, too, is that the accountability signal has been strongest among the youth vote. So they were the people most likely. Okay, so they, for instance, take things like the AutoPen scandal. They're following it less closely than other people, but when you tell them what it is, they're most likely to say they're concerned about it, and they're most likely to want arrests. So it's like the arrest signal in these things like AutoPen, impeaching the judges, Arctic Frost. It's like a 3-to-1 signal among under 30 voters. And they also were most likely to agree with the Trump quote that it was the Napoleon quote, he who saves his country violates no laws. So I do think that if Trump, like some of my feedback would have been in the March to do more of this, to play fast and loose with the law, to ignore some of the judges. And I think that would have allowed him to sort of enter this higher plane of governance where people would have been happy that the system was being fixed. Like, I think that people would have forgiven a lot. Now, part of the problem is it's like, okay, well, you did everything with Israel and Epstein and the one big beautiful bill and the government shutdown. Now here you are with weakened political capital, and I don't think you can get away with it again anymore. And so I'm not calling for like a dictator. And I'm just saying it's like also the Constitution is not a suicide pact. And we are getting to a situation, in my opinion, where people are really concerned about political violence. It's like 90% of them, especially on the left. The left is very concerned that the right is going to become violent. 43% think a civil war or revolutions likely in the next few years. That number keeps going up. And this one's kind of wild. We asked people who's the biggest enemy facing America. And like China wins, but the Democrat Party is number 2 and the Republican Party is number 3. No, actually, I think we had one where the Democrats were number 1. So it's, you know what I mean? And people are overwhelmingly more concerned about domestic terrorism instead of like foreign terrorism, which is why these arguments that Israel is using, like, hey, we're keeping the terrorists away by, they don't care. They're literally worried that we're going to start shooting each other. And so again, I don't know where that goes, but it's on both sides. And this is what happens when all the institutions fall apart and the existing institutions are incapable of dealing with the problem, is that you get new institutions and new value sets. So this is the fourth turning. This happened time and time again. The country was kind of messed up. Then we had World War II. Everybody got on the same page. They punched Hitler in the nose and took out imperialist Japan. And everybody formed a new value system based on us being like the shining beacon of democracy superpower to the rest of the world. And that we had a good run off of that. We had a good 50-year run. Same thing kind of with the Civil War, right? Like we built a new country and we had a whole new set of values. And that's what happens is institutions decay. There's fighting. There's a solution. And like a vacuum gets filled. Like that's my theme here. There is a vacuum and it's going to get filled with something. It would be nice if it got filled with a competent conservative Republican Party that was like willing to get its head out of its rear and not listen to the billionaires and actually listen to the American people. I just don't think we're there yet,
Not only would it be nice, I mean, it's completely necessary. To your point about that opportunity earlier in the year for Trump to really lean in and sort of throw some degree of due process to the side, I think people, myself included, would be okay with that, because I think it's become abundantly clear to me, at least, that we live in the age of anarcho-tyranny. I mean, what just happened in Minnesota earlier today, where the judge threw out the conviction of people who were scamming some sort of government subsidy program, and that's like these people were convicted by a jury of their quote unquote peers. I wouldn't define them as peers, but found guilty, supposed to be sentenced to go to prison, and then a judge comes in out of left field and says no, and throw the conviction out. It's like we don't have justice in America anymore, which is incredibly scary and does leave open an opportunity, at least in my mind, for a somewhat strong man to come in and say, hey, no, if we're going to live in a society, if we're going to have this contract between the government and the governed, like we need to enforce the laws that we're all agreeing to here. And that's completely getting thrown out the window.
What do you think a solution is to that?
I mean, this is controversial in the Bitcoin space too, but you just look at what Bukele's done in El Salvador in the last 3 years. Like,
Yeah.
it's
yeah.
I mean, you got to attack the corrupt judges and actually throw people in jail. Like this whole, I mean, it's becoming abundantly clear if you're online, like a lot of the gruesome targeted deaths towards white people and white women specifically are being sort of waged by people who have multiple criminal offenses. Like the 3-strike policy should exist. What's the stat? If you were to enforce the 3-strike policy, violent crime would reduce by something like 80%.
Oh, I hadn't seen that. It makes sense. Makes 100% sense. That was powerful. It gets glossed over by the Charlie Kirk assassination, but we polled on Irina Zarutska, and overwhelmingly, I mean, obviously, people thought the guy was guilty. But when you poll on the capital punishment, like that's a pretty profound question. Like a lot goes into whether you think that criminals should get killed or not. A lot of value things and worldview and stuff. And capital punishment was popular last time we polled it by like 49 to 36. But after that killing, it was 60% to 20%, including a majority of Democrats. It was plus 70 among Republicans. Capital punishment is super popular among evangelical Christians. So people are fed up. I think that's one of the signals. The problem with, again, the Bukele approach is that there's still like a lot of risk because there's so much backbiting on the right. There's a lot of risk that whoever does this is going to become like a pariah or get, the system's going to turn against them, or like there's still too much risk and not enough upside. And I'm just thinking pragmatically about like, why don't we do that here? And so at the same time, what I see from the conservatives is they have no answer at all. Like I've heard a lot of people conjecture about what Congress could do, for instance, about judges like Boasberg, and essentially they've done nothing. And so you have Elon Musk, who's an important voice, he's a massive voice, screaming about all these corrupt judges. And unfortunately, in my opinion, if you don't have a political system that is capable of holding them accountable, and you don't have the balls to pull a Bukele, then what the right way to do is probably to think like an accelerationist, think like the left, and look at Comey. I understand that the indictment of him was pretty quick, but you also have to acknowledge that it does appear like from a criminal accountability perspective, the Trump administration has been careful to cross its T's and dot its I's, right? It's like, hey, we want this stuff to stick. Well, no, you should just be spamming indictments. Like just throw all these people in, at the court system and see what happens. The idea is like, hey, like, the indictment has to have weight and there should be some supporting evidence, and just let the court system revolve these guys, the revolving door, right back onto the street. At least the Americans will see then that our court system is corrupt. You have a constant signal that the system's worse than you thought. The system's worse than you thought. And we don't have that. Instead, everybody's anger and rage is at Pam Bondi for doing nothing. They could have been arresting one person a day, one big important person, and they would still have another 3 years worth of arrests to do. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, we could, arrest some of the people in the pharmaceutical industry. And I understand the pharmaceutical companies have like, you gave them immunity, but so what? Like they murdered people. Like, so what? There's plenty of corporates that have done bad things. I mean, probably plenty of scamming of the COVID money. Just, at a certain point, I think this is what it comes down to is it's like, okay, you kind of ran on fixing the system and now you are the system.
Yeah.
And so the anger is being directed at them and not at the parts that are bad. It's like, yeah, sure. Everybody hates Boasberg, but it's like, no, this is everywhere. This is literally everywhere. There's Soros DAs everywhere. The law enforcement is probably way more corrupt than anybody knows. And so if you can't fix those problems, I guess you just got to make them look worse.
Yeah.
And nobody will even do that.
That seems like the path towards acceleration is the path that's been chosen, which, again, is a father with young children. Not ideal. But, I mean, to your point about COVID, too, I mean, that's one thing that's passionate. I had to escape to Texas for 4 years because it was crazy here in the Northeast. And,
Yep.
I mean, multiple parts of COVID. The lead up to it, we funded the research that created the virus in the first place. Then we shut the economy down and hollowed out the middle class. even more. And then Trump's guilty of it, like inciting Operation Warp Speed and basically telling everybody to disregard everything they've been taught about vaccines and how it takes a decade to test them. And don't worry, this one's 9 months out and you got to get it. If you don't get it, you can't go to a restaurant, can't go back to your job. Basically putting it in the arms of 80% of the people in the country. And 12 to 18 months later, people start dropping like flies, turbo cancers through the roof. Like there's been no reckoning for that, what I would call crime against humanity, a lot of which the pharmaceutical companies were in the middle of. It's completely anarcho tyranny again. It's
well, that's the thing. It's like you get rightist accelerationists or leftist accelerationists, and the leftist acceleration is to force the system to its like brutal max corruption. And if the right doesn't answer back, then that's what the left is going to do next time they get in office. And I hope they'll be more sane. But I assume we're just going to see more people thrown in jail and more censorship. I go to sleep at night and I just picture Elon Musk standing in front of Congress defending Twitter against all the people who are accusing it of being an anti-Semitic platform, and that we have to stop all this hate against Israel, and look at the way the polling turned against Israel. And wasn't it crazy how it was like Elon Musk's bots, and now we have like an anti-Semitism crisis in America, and we have to shut down Twitter. And it's like, you know what I mean? And it's like, okay, well, the one beachhead of actual open discourse on the internet is now gone, and everything's going to be like Reddit again. And that's where I think like your peak psychological warfare is happening, on these like internet on-ramps into this online like youth liberal monoculture that's Marxist. And the right has no idea. Like Comer had the CEO of Reddit on Capitol Hill, and I don't even think they asked him a tough question. You know, it's like, meanwhile, you have people going on and getting onion links to the deep web to learn how to make like bombs with Antifa, and they're declaring Antifa a terrorist organization, and
not doing
and
anything.
Not like subpoenaing Reddit. Like what are you doing? It's bad, man.
Since you're close to the source of the sentiment of many Americans, but I think particularly for this conversation, the younger generations, what would be the broad brush sort of policies that you would recommend? I think starting, because that's the one thing when you look at Mamdani and the socialist left, it's becoming clear that they're running with this economic populism, affordability crisis meme. And it's not a meme, it's reality. They're leaning into it. And I think the right has an incredible opportunity to lean into it as well. They just completely shit the bed in terms of forming a coherent narrative and policy around it.
Like there's pie in the sky, and then there's like within the actual realms of possibility. I mean, the problem is just so bad. I've proposed fixes. Like, some of these sound really stupid, but I think that they would go a long way. It's like, okay, pull Barron Trump out of Columbia, make him deputy chief of staff, get that guy in the White House, put Trump on the podcast circuit again, like let him sit in front of Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan's going to choose, you know, like it's not going to be as cushy of a discussion as it was last time. But it's going to make Trump actually acknowledge like why he ran and the current state of things. Like he needs to get this feedback continuously from multiple people. They probably need like a coalition of young people in the White House to talk to Trump every morning. And for God's sakes, he should never listen to a single Fox News talking head ever again, because that's the globalist wing of the Republican Party who literally, in my opinion, helped destroy America. And certainly Fox News is not, you know, a pro-Trump organization, and yet he just loves these people. And so that's like one. Two is like, I laid out the plan. It's like, again, I think any plan would work as long as you say, we're restoring the American dream. We acknowledge the Republican Party's role in it, and we're going to fix it together. And this is what we're going to do. And it's going to be a long-term plan. We're going to deliver on this aspect of it. And it includes massive cutback on immigration, punishing corporations for illegal labor and for undercutting American wages. Punish corporations is a very, 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 very big part of this. I would triple the size of the Department of Justice antitrust wing and sue every corporation in America that is offshore jobs. But, put a tax on them. Use the IRS, put payroll taxes on every offshore worker. Like, the entire CPA industry is like 50, 60, whatever percent it is offshore. And what's going to happen when you do things like this? The stock market's going to crash. And I think people are okay with it as long as they have a light at the end of the tunnel. It's like, hey, we're going to fix the housing market. You know what I mean? Yes, your housing value is going to come down. Why? Because we're going to build 5 million homes and train you how to do it. And we're not going to do it with any illegal labor. And we're going to get rid of 5 million people that are from other countries that shouldn't be here. And it's like, and again, they're doing some of the stuff. The H-1B fee will be part of this plan. But it's like Trump doesn't even know the H-1B plan, the fee exists. He probably doesn't know about Project Firewall and why it's happening and who's running it and what the goal is. And so that's one. And then two is like, hey, we hear you. When somebody gets assassinated and nobody trusts the FBI, it's because the FBI was corrupted and we just put another person in charge of corrupt organization. And so we're actually going to reform government. Here's our plan. It's going to be visible. It's not going to be transparency because transparency just pisses people off more. Oh, look, the CIA is just as bad as I thought it was. No, we're going to go through a very systematic internal investigation, public airing of evidence, and firings. And it'd be great if you threw them in jail too. But you're going to frog march the people out of the IRS, the DOJ, the Department of Defense, all these people we all know are still there. And it always should have been predicated on fraud and abuse and corruption and misuse of, and not on downsizing the government. It's like, Doge, that was great, but this is about restoring trust in institutions for the American people. And obviously people are going to cry about it. And that's the point. The point is for people to cry. And I think that 2-point plan right there, if you could, and again, if the Republican Party is not going to play, I think a lot of people on the left would be behind this. I think you see increasingly people like Ro Khanna and maybe even Mamdani, like people like that willing to lean into this. Like it's kind of the stuff that Elizabeth Warren and AOC have been saying, but obviously they're not true believers in the stuff they say. But that's what happens when you have a political realignment. And so the Republican Party can either play ball. But the idea that somehow John Thune's pharmaceutical backers should be able to prevent us from reordering the cost of healthcare, that has to go away. And if he's going to stand in the way, then you have to be very specific about why these people are blocking you. It's not MTG, she's gone crazy. Look at this. She can't be trusted as a reliable MAGA vote. No, be very specific about what the problem with her. If you're going to fight your own party, you have to be fighting the broken system and force Republicans to pick a side. Are you going to be on the part of the party that's fixing this, or are you going to be on the broken system side? I would love for somebody to freaking rail on Chuck Grassley right now for going to bat for the big ag and the pesticide industry, people that obviously support him because of where he's from. When you have people like Callie Means in there looking out for the health of the people and passing regulations that try and keep cancer-causing agents or whatever, these kind of things. And unfortunately, that's going to take a Manhattan Project in order to do it, and the window is closing. Oh, the third point is that they need $500 million to fund a shadow RNC to fight the state and county level Republican parties and basically knit together all of the grassroots volunteers group in front of an organization that is intentionally built not to cipher donor money. So it's great you got Gruters there, but he's not going to be able to fight against all of the establishment Republican scumbags spread out across the country. And all those people do is just run crap candidates so that they can maximize the amount of donor harvesting money that they get out of the NRSC, the NRCC, and stuff like that. So that's how you could fix it. And I think it's possible, but I think the level of will is just not there at all. And it's okay, probably pie in the sky to think that somebody's just going to cough up $500 million for Republicans to fix America without having any personal interest, because that's all Trump's donors. He says this. He said, he told the world in a speech about Miriam Adelson. He said this. That's how it works with every single one of them. So that's what I'm like. Again, I don't think that's too retarded of a plan. I think it's achievable. It's just a matter of will.
It seems very, I mean, on the surface at least, it seems very simple and even keeled. Maybe not even keeled, but like it seems like it would answer a lot of the questions and a lot of the frustration that exists in the younger voting base right now. It would certainly be more appealing to me than what's going on right now. And I mean, the extent of, like, I don't really get too engaged in the dynamics of the Republican Party and the donor class, the incumbent donor class there, but I've seen it up close and personal with our industry. I've been going to DC a lot, talking to politicians and some think tanks about Bitcoin policy, and just seeing how money has corrupted policy as it pertains to Bitcoin and broader crypto is nauseating. If you have money, you're going to get in the room, you're going to be sitting at the table, pushing your wares at a hypercritical time for this industry in the country. And it's just become obvious from my perspective of what I've seen in Bitcoin and broader crypto that the money talks more than sensible
It's way
ideas.
worse than you know. It's way, way, way worse than you know. There's a really good article in The Guardian that came out, I think, about a month and a half ago, and it shows how interests on the right work. And what I kind of say is that the Democrats are the party of big government and also corporations, and Republicans are the party of corporations and also big government. And like this really lays it out. So, there's an aspect of corporate welfare on the right, and a really big lightning rod of it is the whole food stamp program. So it turns out that out of the like 120 billion a year we spend on food stamps, like Walmart winds up pocketing a cool like 1/4 of that in revenue, goes straight to Walmart. And that like apparently between 10 and 15% of Coke US's revenue comes from food stamps as well, because a lot of it gets spent on soda. And so this article lays out, like, I don't know if you remember, but back in March, there was a period where all these influencers got caught shilling for big soda on the right. And they used this website Influenceable. Well, that was actually only like one prong of a much bigger strategy. And so this article lays out about how the American Beverage Association, which doesn't really care about politics at all other than what can it buy, said, oh, well, Republicans are in office and we want to keep our food stamps. And so let's get Republican lobbyists because Republicans are in office. And so they went and found like Republican influencers and Republican lobbyist groups. And the article says, well, it was actually really super easy to convince everybody in Washington, D.C. to support continued soda and food stamps. Barely an inconvenience. All they had to do was like hold a check in front of them, or threaten to pull their funding or whatever. But the real problem was at the state level. So the article literally just glosses over how easy it was to purchase Washington, D.C. by an interest group. And the problem is at a state level, it's hard to purchase state legislators because there's just too many of them. And what was happening is that states were passing laws to remove soda from food stamps, Republican states. So they went and they spent $2 million on a Republican pollster. And I can just tell you that that's a ridiculous amount of money. Our revenue line, I think combined for the last 4 years, isn't probably even 2 million. And of course, the results found that, imagine that, Republican voters just love people buying soda on food stamps. They probably use some like BS libertarian arguments in push questions or like however they did it, but they got the results they wanted. And then they bring them to Republican governors and say, well, you don't want to make your Republican voters mad. And this bill that you're about to sign, it's going to be bad for them. And so you shouldn't do this. And they were successful in killing this legislation in multiple states, saving probably hundreds of millions of dollars of soda industry revenue, a really big return on investment. And then we went into the field and found the exact opposite. Like, no, Republicans don't like people buying sugary beverages on food stamps. Like, that's stupid. Why would... And then, like anybody with a brain knows that. But it took us pulling out of our own pocketbook to go out there and say, like, no, you're not crazy. Americans aren't stupid. This is retarded. But that's not how the Republican Party works.
No. I mean, it's
Every
very
single
obvious.
thing.
You drink soda, you get diabetes, you drive up everybody's healthcare costs. It's pretty simple.
Oh, yeah. The health industry loves it, too. I'm surprised they weren't lobbying for it.
Yeah.
Like rot those kids' teeth out, man.
Yeah. It's incredibly disenchanting. This whole conversation, because that's one thing we have here. Never doom. There's always a way out. And obviously, that's become a meme in some circles of the social media realm, particularly in the last 2 years. And that's one thing. Going back to what you said earlier, of people, and again, what I focus on is like, again, I think a lot of this economic stress stems from the fact that we can just print money, and people simply need a better form of money to save their wealth in and earn their wealth in. I think Bitcoin is that. But to your point earlier, people are just completely unaware of the dynamics of money, how it works. And this is more of a ramble than a question, but like, how do we, and that's part of what I try to do here, is like educate people about it. We've had success, but not at the scale that's necessary to really make it clear to most Americans that this is the core of the problem. It's like, how do you shift focus towards this part of it?
Well, one of the things that I'm looking forward to seeing is that what will be the response, and I don't know yet. We're going to poll on it to Donald Trump's $2,000 check. And I really have no idea what the result's going to be, but I think it'll be telling. If the young people are like, screw this, I hate it, I think it'll be telling. You know, there's an aspect of, like, again, any Republican Party that is fixed on solving these issues would have a broad basket of wealth inequality measures with which to gauge their success. That's how you would measure it, not the stock market. Donald Trump's still fixated on the stock market. And that's not how you win. You actually have to, like, you give people America back, which means that they need jobs, they need houses, they need all these things, right? But if you look at these metrics, it's really fascinating. And one of the ones that I found on Fred, and I should not, like, I got my MBA, but I'm not an economist. You know, I'm just a guy that's asking people questions. So, and our company is very small. I have very little time. I shouldn't be the one dicking around on the Federal Reserve database, like trying to come up with ratios to measure why people are pissed off. And yet I've discovered ones that people haven't even like contemplated. So one of them is to take per capita total public debt. So just split up all the debt by Americans and then divide it by median real income. And so that's like, okay, well, how capable is your average American, the middle American, at paying off their share of the government's debt? Because it's like, okay, well, the stock market's gone up. Well, has it gone up more or less than the amount of dollars printed? Like, oh, hey, the housing prices have gone up. Well, has it gone up more or less than the amount of dollars printed? Like, it's hard to know. The debt's gone up. Are we doing better? Are we doing worse? It's hard to know, right? Well, when you look at it this way, what's weird is that the ratio is pretty stable at about 0.5, 0.6 area, which means that the average income was like, okay, compared to the per capita portion of the debt. Well, about 2005, 2006, it's a hockey stick. It goes from 0.6 to about 2.5, where it is now. And it's a straight freaking line. It's a straight line. You know, it's got a couple of waves during the housing crisis and during COVID, but it's a straight line. And so what that means is that on top of the expansion in government debt, wealth concentration has priced people out of their ability to pay off the debt. And so that's a really, really bad sign, because it means that we're concentrating debt payment on a smaller and smaller portion of America. But a 5 times decrease, 5 times in just 20 years of people's ability to push on the same boulder that we're all pushing on is horrifying. And I'm telling you, there's like literally a left turn. There's a point, an inflection. And you know where I think that point is? The freaking bailout bill. Yeah. Where we started printing a hell of a lot of Bernanke bucks. We socialized the banking losses all along, where, you know, the offshoring and the H-1Bs probably picked up in vast, you know, quantities. And it's staring at you right on the chart. It took me 5 minutes to print out, and not a single person in all of politics or the banking industry or anybody cares about that at all. You're literally just fixated on the stock market.
Yeah. The stock market is the economy, Mark. Don't you know this?
Yeah. It's a bunch of boomers speculating on momentum plays.
Yeah. I've sleuths some Fred charts before, and like that's what radicalized me. Like, I was a senior in high school in the fall of 2008. My dad was in finance. He was affected negatively by the crash and studied econ in college, and always had this intuition that something's terribly wrong here. But if you go and you look at the Fed balance sheet from like 19 2013 to 2008, expanded from like 0 to 800 billion in the course of 95 years. And then between 2009 and 2011, it went from like 800 billion to 4.7 trillion. So they 6x'd it in a matter of 3 years, but took 95 years. And so to your point, that is that's what I think we'll look back. It'll be like 9/11, the first tremor, and then 2008 financial crisis. Like, all right, we're never looking back. Like, we'll look back in posterity, be like, oh, the empire fell somewhere in this period, and now we're just picking up the pieces.
Well, that's what happens in the fourth turnings. Is usually the crisis phase is kicked off with like a preliminary crisis. So we had World War I and then World War II. So I think a lot of people have speculated the great financial crisis is what has ushered in this, it's like, I don't know what it's going to be, if it's going to be a civil war or a revolution, or they're going to send us off to fight NATO's war or something like that, but something big's going to happen. The good news is that your generation is supposed to fix all these problems. And unfortunately for the Zoomers, they're the ones that get shoved into the meat grinder. So I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. Maybe you should, if you're a Zoomer watching this, you should probably like go apply to a seminary or something. You might avoid the draft.
Well,
I'm just trying to give people real solutions here. You know what I mean? Like,
well, that's what I was going to say. We've been talking about the advice you would give the administration, but you talk to a lot of Zoomers in your DMs. What advice are you, or would you give them?
They're all burning their MAGA hats right now. It's like, I never voted for Republican. I voted Trump 3 times. How could he insult me like this? My entire career has been stolen by Indians, and they all lie on their resumes. And how does he not know this? It's so bad. Like, just stuff like that. Just constant stream. Oh, I work in the electrical industry and I'm an electrical engineer, and they've outsourced so much of it to India, and these people control our critical infrastructure. And if we ever got in a war with them, it would all come crashing down. We wouldn't have electricity for months. Like, this is what I'm just getting constantly in my feed. And obviously it's like a focus group. It's not a poll, right? But it tells you a freaking lot. I mean, there's suicidal people. They're like, it's just bad. And, like no amount of boomers like, well, these people should just try not being crazy. Well, it's like, you're the ones that put them on SSRIs. These people, like over a third of them have mental health diagnosis. Their dating scene is horrifying. All the women are feminists. None of the women want to get married and procreate. They all just want careers. They get passed over on every like high paying job ever. They can't afford a house, and they're getting called like, they'd be a little bit edgy and they're trying to shut out of the society. They get called anti-Semitic or racist or whatever. It's like they haven't, the forces creating people like Nick Fuentes have not been muted. And what they just tried to do was like shut this guy down, and they wound up, like, his numbers are unbelievable now, like really incredible. So he's not going anywhere. Tucker's not going anywhere. And it's like, you can think of them as a feedback loop into the Republican Party and into the right. And it's like, they're just going to get louder until you actually fix your core problems. And your core problems, you've been completely corrupted by every special interest except the voter. That's all Nick Fuentes is a guy who's like, hey, I'm mad with my political party. We have real concerns that everybody's ignoring. And if you're going to ignore me, then I'm going to be super edgy to get your attention. And it worked. And, now he's bigger than Ben Shapiro for sure.
He's getting a ton of influence. I've got normies
in
my life. Normies in my life, I would never expect, like, bringing him up unprovoked. It's
yeah. When you get normies watching Nick Fuentes, and it's like, it's like, obviously there's 5% of his content that I don't condone, but it's also not nearly as bad as the jokes that we all told each other when we were 12, like in the playground. You know what I mean? So it's like this weird situation where everybody's like clutching pearls about something that's like who cares? Like, nobody cares. And again, I don't know what his situation is. Like, I don't like how he just came out and embraced like Mamdani's socialism to create a new national socialist movement in America like that. But again, he's on Rumble. He's got 14x fewer subscribers than Ben Shapiro. And on a much more terrible platform without an algorithm, he surpasses Ben Shapiro's views easily. So I look at his views and I say, well, there's probably 5 to 10 million people watching his content. And then you see stuff like the Stanford Review published an article that says that 25% of their incoming freshman class are groypers. Stanford, like,
How they poll? They have an anonymous poll where people feel comfortable.
I don't know what it was. I saw Mark Dice say it, and it's like, then there's the other stuff where it's like, oh, like 30 to 40% of conservative men on Capitol Hill identify with Nick Fuentes' movement. It's like, yeah, I mean, it's a feedback loop, and when things go wrong, the feedback loops get stronger. And the problem here is like you have this. It's more than just economical, right? And we all know that there's problems in America that are worse than just the economical problems. It's like major problems with like feminism and the lack of cultural assimilation, like all of these forces, the de-churching of America, like all these forces are part of the fourth turning and what has helped destroy our system. Like, yes, it's pretty obvious that if you take religion out of a society, you're going to have people in leadership positions who are going to be more rent seeking and more personally interested in their own financial gain. And it's like, okay, well, you haven't replaced that with any value system. Like we literally took the 10 Commandments out of school, and now the kids wanted people shot that they disagree with. It's like, yeah, that's, that's the kind of thing that happens when you do that. So that's part of the feedback loop that Nick Fuentes is saying. It's like, I see you, big business Republican scumbags. Not only have you sold America out, you helped undermine the societal fabric that gave me a society that's unrecognizable to the boomers who grew up just 60 years ago in a very different America.
Yeah. I mean, you can replace secular religion, but something's going to replace. You can take it out, but something's going to replace it. And that's been, I think, the woke mind virus. And
yeah,
no, that's the thing I think about a lot. Like, I come from a big Irish Catholic family in the Northeast, and very fortunate to have a very strong nuclear family and extended family, and we're still close to these days. But the younger generations are not getting. That's what I worry about. Like, I look at even some people my age that haven't started having kids, and that's when things really get weird. And I've seen this firsthand in the inner city in Chicago when the nuclear family is disintegrated, it completely tears apart whole neighborhoods, societies at large. And I think that is the thing that worries me most, is this lack of family formation.
Well, I think that's part of the good news here. Like, the silver lining to the storm cloud is that I think everybody for so long, and maybe it's the boomer politics or whatever, has been sort of like preaching values, but it's been push. It's like, you need to be more conservative. You need to be more Christian. Why aren't you procreating? Blah, 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 blah. You need to work harder. And I think the values are actually like kind of pull, right? It's like, okay, well, there's a huge crisis and we have to solve it. Oh man, we better get our crap together. Like, I think there's an aspect of that. You know what I mean? Like, yes, the GI generation, yes, the silent generation stepped up and volunteered to go overseas and fight against the Axis, right? Like, that happened. But it's like, well, if you look at the 20s and the flapper movement and the Great Depression, and like, you just wonder, like, well, was that America always there that enlisted to go beat, Nazi Hitler, right? Nazi Germany. I don't think it was. I think people came together and said, you know what? This is a cause we're fighting for. We need to put our problems away and get our crap together. And I think we're going to see that. And I think increased economic opportunity will probably be one of the biggest forces for rechurching, refocusing on familial values, conservatism. Charlie Kirk said this, the 3 M's, right? Mortgage, marriage, and like whatever the other one was. Maternal. I don't know. What was the other M? It's like, have kids, get married, get a house. And that's the kind of thing that gets people into the conservative movement. It's like, okay, now you have something to protect. And people say this about the schools too. Oh, the schools are terrible. We should fix the schools. Well, it's like, you know what? If corporate America couldn't hire all of Bangalore, then we would be training our kids better.
Yeah.
And, they would need it. We would have coding boot camps in high school. We would have job, fairs,
Yeah. Well, that's another silver lining, and to end it on a positive note, if the will is there, the opportunity to actually affect the will has never been easier and better. I mean, talk about reshoring, re-educating, like the ability to learn things on the internet is like, if you were to hand this technology to somebody 100 years ago, they'd be mind blown. Like, if there's a will there, the way does exist. And I could easily see a quick reshoring and sort of re-educating of the workforce to step up if the will was there, not only from the political class, but from the citizenry as well.
Yeah, I mean, Trump doesn't want colleges to go out of business, but the entire computer science undergrad curriculum for MIT is on the internet right now. You could walk through it probably in about 8 months, is my guess, right? So it's like, what are we even doing?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We're like supporting an entire industry that's completely doesn't need to be there.
Again,
That's radicalizing everybody. You know?
Yeah, going back to like the FDR meme, it's like, why would you want to be associated with the university system that's indoctrinating people to work against the will of what you claim your policies are trying to affect? Mark, it's been great. Thank you for everything that you do. I think whether you recognize it or not, you've become part of the zeitgeist of the younger generations that aren't being acknowledged or listened to by the boomer political class right now. I think it's important, whether you realize it or not. I think it's important work, and I do believe that we are in a mimetic warfare, and you are providing a lot of good material and ammunition to fight this war. Because at the end of the day, and to your point, I'm one of those people who's pretty much convinced that we're not going to solve these problems via the traditional political avenues and apparatus. Like, we need people to realize that it's a somewhat of a lost cause, and we just need to congregate and organize outside of that to try to fix things. That's why I focus on Bitcoin, because it gives you the opportunity to do so. You don't need to ask permission. You can just start building around it.
No, I think Bitcoin, for instance, is a forcing function, just like Nick Fuentes is a forcing function. Nick Fuentes is a forcing function on politics. Bitcoin is a forcing function on finance. And I think all these things are being brought to bear against a system that is weakening very, very, very rapidly. And so that's why I think like it's all gonna go crazy in the next like 3 or 4 years. Like already the stuff with Venezuela and the implications with the whole voting system, like I don't know, it might speed up. But yeah, I'm just a guy shit posting in my basement, doing my best, trying to save the world from my 4 Gen Alphas. I'm gonna have 4 Gen Alphas now, so I don't. Usually Gen Alpha gets through the crisis pretty okay. So maybe I'm looking out there for those Zoomers. I don't want to have to go send them over to the muck in Eurasia fighting against Russia, who should be our ally. While China gets us ready for our civil war. So, I really appreciate it and doing my best.
Well, thank you, sir. We'll link to your acts, to Rasmus, and everything else in the show notes. Thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoy your Thanksgiving. Yeah,
likewise. Great to be here. Thanks.
All right. Peace and love, freaks. Thank you for listening to this episode of TFTC. If you've made it this far, I imagine you got some value out of the episode. If so, please share it far and wide with your friends and family. We're looking to get the word out there. Also, wherever you're listening, whether that's YouTube, Apple, Spotify, make sure you like and subscribe to the show. And if you can leave a rating on the podcasting platforms, that goes a long way. Last but not least, if you want to get these episodes a day early and ad-free, make sure you download the Fountain podcasting app. You can go to fountain.fm to find that. $5 a month, get you every episode a day early, ad-free, helps the show, gives you incredible value. So please consider subscribing via Fountain as well. Thank you for your time, and until next time. Okay.